When was the last time you were in Carolyn's apartment?
We had cases together. Sometimes we would work after hours at her apartment.
Your fingerprints were found in her bedroom. Were you and Carolyn romantically involved?
My suspect. Because I did not kill her.
For most of the many years that I've known him now, has just always had such profound insight on the craft of acting. You know, he's such an incredible actor himself, but mostly it just comes from his advice of being present and trying to be as alive and listen as best you can, but really be honest about yourself and be honest with the other person in the scene. And he demands that. And so I think it's the same thing, though it's a fictional world in some of the things that we've done, and particularly this one. In our life, it's the same demand. It's an honesty to be able to communicate openly.
I mean, the thing I love about working with Jake is that I know that every time we get out there, he's going to be there. Like, that I'll be talking to a person that's listening, and he will be talking to me, and I'll be listening to him. And believe it or not, it's, you know, it can feel like too long before you run into other people, you know, in scenes, because people are taking time to get to know one another. For example, on set, the first week and a half, well, all those scenes are gonna have to be reshot. Or someone's nervous, they've just started doing it. All the different reasons that people fail to hear each other happen all the time. You know, and that's really what the struggle is to find the other person. And with Jake, the beautiful thing is I know it's like immediately we're doing it. And so we don't have to think about that part of it. We can think about the most important part, which is the story. You know, nobody cares, like, particularly how you make the furniture. They just want the chair in the end. You know, so like...
I'm interested in how...
He's interested in how the furniture's made.
I don't know if you can separate the things that he's dealing with. The thing I think that makes the show so interesting to watch is that this character just gets thrown into so many dynamic, pressurized situations, you know. I think he's definitely grieving the loss of something, but he's also been holding this sort of secret, and then it gets embellished, everyone's other stuff gets thrown on it and thrown on him, and he has his own selfishness and his own desires, and they all kind of, so there's it's what makes, I think, a David Kelley show so intriguing and so binge-worthy, and so, you know, you're trying to sort all those things out. I don't think there's any separation of them. He's just constantly dealing with them all the time, you know.
I really like that, you know, a fundamental part of our job in the show is storytelling. And, you know, I've played lawyers several times in different things, and I'm always struck by the idea that, you know, the prosecutor has to tell a story, and the defense just has to mess up their story, right? That's just the way it goes. And so I really enjoyed the process of recreating the story all the time. Oh no, the story is this now. Like, even as the character. And then that's what the audience gets to experience as we go through, right? Which is, you go like, this is the story. Wait a second, I'm starting to think this is the story. And so everyone becomes very active in doing it. I think that's part of what makes it very compulsive to view, you know.
Well, you know what? We were just talking about this, actually. I mean, I think he's quite a departure from Luke, to be fair, so not to disappoint anyone, but there might be something new coming on the horizon. I think it was one of the things that attracted me to this part, you know, that Nico, on the face of it, is, you know, wants justice, wants the right thing, which is a bit Luke-y, but actually his intentions and his motivations are a little bit more nefarious, I think.
Yeah, I think that there is some, I guess what makes it compelling to watch is that everyone is struggling. There's a bit of a, a toggling back and forth about what we believe, right? And I think her training as a detective inspires her to be skeptical, but then she has this allegiance to her friend, to her colleague, and so watching those two things in what's that word? In conflict, I think is really fun to watch. I think there is, I think Rigo is a really good detective. I think she is operating in a system where she is not as enfranchised as maybe some other characters as I've played. I think the chief of staff to the president has a lot more power than a detective in the Chicago PD. But I think that there is a through line, but I think that this is very different, and I think that this person is struggling a lot more internally than perhaps some other characters I've played. So that's been really fun for me.
Well, I think the bane of his life is Tommy, played by the brilliant Peter Sarsgaard, and it's really tough. I don't know if you've ever experienced working with someone who you think is trying to tear you down and destroy everything you've built for the last few years, but that's Nico's position. And so one of the struggles he has is trying to keep the case alive and on its feet and in all its integrity intact. Well, there could be some moral corruption. But, I don't want to spoil things too much, but I would say that not everyone's incentives are aligned.
He is the consummate professional. He's been doing this for a really long time, obviously, from like Donnie Darko on. And so he really knows his way. He's from a family of storytellers, and he really knows his way around a set. And I think watching his kind of holistic understanding of storytelling was really inspiring. I'm excited for him to direct something at some point, and it was a joy. It was a pleasure. He's great to play with.
Yeah, there were a couple of times where, he has to do speeches, obviously, because he's a lawyer. And, I found myself a couple of times just, sitting, just watching him work. It's dreamy.
I don't think we've had any that have been that particular cocktail of, morality and monstrosity, if you will. I mean, he's just, what drew me to the piece to begin with was the contradiction of Rusty. I mean, this is a guy who very much believes in the truth and yet tells lies. He is, committed to justice and yet subverts it. He is a devoted family man. He betrays his wife and children. He is a loyal friend. He betrays Raymond Horgan. And yet, all those principles are genuine to him. It's not that he's disingenuous with those values. Those are real. They make up who he is. But living up to those principles at times is another matter. And what drives him to have these lapses and to sever these fault lines, very, very fascinating. I think he's a deeply insecure man who's looking to approve of himself at every turn, and it's that quest that leads him astray. I'm not sure I've had another character embody all of those values. Certainly James Spader on Boston Legal was, was both noble and abhorrent. He played those conflicts and those contradictions well. But Rusty is a different beast. Most of the characters that I spend a long time with, and you do when you're writing a series or a mini-series, you're spending your days with these people. most of them at the end of the day, I find, okay, I could go hang out with this person for a few days, and I had no interest of hanging out with Rusty, even though I was compelled by him. I believe he could be somebody's best friend, but he probably wouldn't be mine. Well, so the first answer is probably what we just talked about. I thought that Rusty is such a fascinating character of such moral ambiguity that it's there's a looky-loo part of me as a character writer that's just staring into this guy and go, wow, this is a different animal, because he's noble, and yet it's his compulsion to be noble that causes him to stumble sometimes. And that's interesting stuff. If I had a degree in psychology or psychiatry, maybe I'd be able to diagnose him. But I loved not being able to diagnose him. I think he stayed unpredictable at every turn in this series, and he's still kind of a mystery to me as a character. Beyond that, what caused me to jump on Presumed at this time, it's kind of the same thing with every project. I'm old now, I'm ready to quit, but if a project comes along that has a fantastic story with rich characters, then I just can't say no. And this one, I'd always loved the book. I'm a big fan of Scott Turow. I love the nuance of the various characters, not just Rusty, but all the characters in the book. And as a writer, just the opportunity to explore these kinds of people, what makes them do what they do and how they behaviorally be. I was kind of rubbing my hands together and let's go. And on top of that, a great legal thriller. I just felt that it was a great opportunity for storytelling. And at the end of the day, that's kind of the compass that I listen to.